Well, they came, they met, they talked, they left. But what exactly did the United Nations accomplish? The 69th session of the General Assembly is now history. Diplomats from around the world took up a lot of major issues, from increased representation for African nations, of course, to climate change. And on the least issue, they agreed. On one issue, they agreed. In a rare unanimous vote, the Security Council approved a resolution to address the growing threat posed by foreign terrorists. Just how that resolution will be turned into action, we'll have to wait and see. Well, Steve Acunto is a chancellor of the Consular Corps College. Clearly, there were winners and losers here, Steve. And of course, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Let's start with President Barack Obama. Winner or loser?
Well, on balance, a winner. Actually, I followed pretty carefully the nuances in the speech, as I'm sure you did. He made a few mistakes. The fact checkers found some errors in judgment and also in inference. For example, he stated that the world is more stable today than it was 5 years ago, which is a stretch.
I hate to laugh at that, but I would agree.
No, it's the truth.
Yeah.
But he said that with a straight face. Then he said, I think this could be taken two ways. He mentioned Ferguson in the context of his speech. Now, the reason for doing that would be to demonstrate that the United States understands that it's not perfect, that we're not preaching to people from a righteous standpoint. On the other hand, in the United States, that mention would seem a little bit inappropriate.
But before we move on to some of the other world leaders, what in your mind sticks out with President Barack Obama that makes him a winner in this particular case?
Well, first of all, he was omnipresent. If this was the optics Olympics, he was the player most watched, obviously. He was also pretty deft. He chaired the Security Council meeting. He gave a very I would call it a slow and thoughtful address. He was careful not to make Islam the target of any military action.
That was key.
He was key. He actually condemned the use of chemical weapons in the course of his remarks, and he called upon nations to act as one. On balance, I think he came out a winner.
Okay, also some of the losers here in this case, as you think.
Well, Benjamin Netanyahu showed up late for the party. That was one problem, because of a religious holiday, and so his speech wasn't carried as widely as it might have been. But when he gave it, he was roundly and directly invidious toward Iran. He was uncompromising in an atmosphere where there was a general sense of compromise. He was conspicuously uncompromising. I'm sorry.
No. I was speaking of Netanyahu. Then, of course, you have Hassan Rouhani, who had a charm offensive the last time he spoke. In this particular case, how would you rate him?
Well, I think he was stoking the same fire as he did before. He said the Mideast is burning. What he did that was, I thought, not only bad manners, but also bad judgment. He said that it was the West that was creating terrorism, and that doesn't follow. The West was creating terrorism. There are other forces, from everything from poverty to failed religious instruction. I mean, you can go down a list of 100 reasons why there are terrorists today like ISIL who are on the move. Blaming the West was clumsy, I thought. I want to mention that. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I want to mention that the back and forth between Iran and Israel was avoided very meticulously by the big winner in all of this was Prime Minister Modi. He was the world series of public relations. He spoke in Hindi. He was one of the few who spoke with great extemporaneous skill. He avoided Kashmir in his speech, even though the Prime Minister of Pakistan rode India. He meticulously avoided getting into a contest with him. I thought he was the big winner, and of course, the follow-ups afterwards, the Madison Square Garden, the trip to Washington, those were all very. By the way, they showed him at the statue of Martin Luther King, just on the broadcast before. There's actually a beautiful statue of Gandhi about 3 blocks from there. in Washington. That would be a good photo op.
And it certainly would have been. I don't know if they went to that. You know, look, we cover this event. We have to cover it. Of course, it's critically important. Without all the traffic jams in New York City for New Yorkers complaining, you know, for this momentous occasion, whatever, 2 years. The question is, how many people really care about this? And in terms of the speeches that are made outside of the backroom deals that are probably done behind the scenes, how important are these speeches, Steve?
Well, I mean, I can't imagine you'd say, let's have a big banquet hall like the UN and not have the appropriate guests. I think they have to be made. They have to be given. The nuances are significant. The potential for movement and agreement we saw, for example, with Obama and with others, is still very high. Mm-hmm. That's the purpose of the League of Nations, of the UN. That is the purpose. I believe further that what goes on, the dealings, the meetings, mm-hmm. it's just a convenient convergence, almost like an association's annual convention. You know, it works.
Lastly, Russia, Sergei, a winner or loser here in your mind?
Well, I think roughly speaking, he has no moral authority to talk about people taking action in the country, in other countries like Syria,
right.
after Crimea and after what's going on in the East. But I also feel that you know, he's a very intelligent man. That comes across.
But I mean, does he have any really power in what he says over there? It's like this Putin, I suppose. Sergei Putin, he says one thing. I mean, is he just towing the line here? How much power does he really have?
He wouldn't be here if he weren't influential. And you know, this Putin administration, they're very smart people, no question. And there are plutocrats all around them. But in my view, they are connected, as were, you know, the administration of George Bush and Jim Baker and those. They're connected in a way that's stronger than just politics.
Lastly, Sergei Lavrov, winner, loser?
I have to say, on balance, I would say loser.
Okay. I'll go with that.
I don't think he scored the points he could have scored. They need a diplomatic sense now that it transcends just the face they've painted for themselves in Ukraine.
All right, Steve Acunto, thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie.
As always.
Thank you.